Having a relationship with Langley Event Center since the doors opened in 2009, this week's Phone Calls with Friends guest is Jared Harman. Jared has a unique point of view on LEC as someone who's been an integral part of planning an event, all the way to someone who's now coming to enjoy them on a family night out. Let's go find out what Jared has to say. All right, episode 5 of Phone Calls with Friends. This one's got a little bit of a different twist to it. We've invited back our old friend Jared Harman, who worked here kind of from the time it was the Wild West right into, kind of the new modern look it has today. Thanks for joining us, Jared.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler.
It's it's kind of a real interesting one. You and I obviously spent, often hundreds and hundreds of hours a month together working through here. So we've been through a lot of personal experiences through this. But now since you've, left 4 or 5 years ago, you've kind of have a different outlook on LEC. Now you can kind of appreciate it more as a fan or a sports fan and a parent and probably some other things. So it'll be kind of interesting to see your take from the first 5 years to the second 5 years.
Yeah, it's definitely the time away. There's an element of makes the heart grow fonder a little bit, but it does make you appreciate what the event center is and was and continues to be. It is. It's crazy that it's been 4 or 5 years since I've been there, though. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it definitely has been. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably a good. It's funny how even just the atmosphere around here has changed. One of your most famous moments here is going back to like the summer of 2012, I believe, with the famous fight between Coquitlam and Langley, where you had your frosted tips and white framed glasses. You've come a lot. That's just going from that to now. You can really see the growth and change in you as a person.
Yeah. I was we always joke, and I'm sure you still do. I'm sure it hasn't changed that much there. Where like when you work in any kind of sports and entertainment capacity, it's you wear multiple hats, and I'm not sure I ever signed up to be security, but and I'm not sure anybody would ever have me sign up to be security, but I kind of got thrust into it. But I mean, that was also the fun of working in that environment, is that you never really knew what you're in for, and when you love sports like you and I do, it's just part of being on a team. And I still look. I mean, that night was one of the most entertaining nights I had working at the event center, for sure. And I'm glad it lives on in all its glory, including the white glasses. So.
Well, that's kind of one of the one of the things, just to kind of hit on what you say. That's one of the best parts of working at Langley Event Center, is that you can work for the Canucks and you're focused on hockey, or you can work for the Lions and your football. But here you really do get a taste of just everything. Like I can't even count. Like we've done everything: curling, we do football, some equestrian's done through here, hockey obviously on a regular basis, lacrosse. We've had badminton come through here. We did the senior games, table tennis. It's if you as a sports fan, you really truly get a taste of a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you touch everything. I mean, for me, I was fortunate enough to work for a junior hockey team for 4 or 5 years prior to the event center opening, and that was a blast. It was like a dream come true for me to have the chance to work in junior hockey. But when the event center opened, and having the chance to transition into the role, you got to do everything. I mean, we had figure skaters, we had one of the things I appreciate probably most is the amateur sports side of things. And I know you feel similarly, but like working with the high school championships with the boys and the girls, like those are some of my best memories, is seeing kids win provincial championships on like the biggest stage possible. So you get to do it all, and we were fortunate enough, and I'm sure again this continues, but you work really closely with all the teams. Like I saw the ins and outs of amateur and pro lacrosse, and tier 1 and tier 2 junior hockey, and Hockey Canada, and all of those things. It's an experience that as the years go by, I look back on probably more and more fun. Like work's always going to be work, but to have the chance to spend your time and the hours, and there were a lot of hours, but it was always fun, and it was something that I don't think you can replicate anywhere else.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention, going back to the provincials, is you get so immersed in it, and these become kind of household names to us, who we know who all these players and who the players are to watch and come through. And I talked to Aaron Mitchell last week on Phone Calls with Friends, and one of the things that we brought up that was it's kind of a side story that's pretty neat, is in that 2014 provincial championships, which was the first expanded tournament where we hosted 8 tournaments over the course of the 12 days, there was Jonathan Kongbo, played for Holy Cross, who's now signed with the San Francisco 49ers. Chase Claypool played in that for Abbotsford, who went to Notre Dame and has just been signed with drafted by the Steelers. I'm not sure where the contract's at. And then Terrell Jana, who played for St. Thomas More Collegiate, is now at Virginia. He's returning for another year, but he's almost assured to go to onto an NFL career of some sort. And it's super cool to track these kids that we knew as 14, 15, 16-year-olds playing through here and seeing now that they become kind of, they're destined to be household names across North America now.
Yeah, and even beyond sports, it's seeing some of them move into like their business careers or whatever it is they're doing. It's just like it is weird. You do feel like this vested interest in these kids' success, right? And for some of them, you see them every year. Like there's some kids that like started with the junior tournament and worked their way all the way through to the senior tournament, and then beyond that, they're playing CIS. And so you'd see them come through and they'd be playing against Trinity or for Trinity in some cases. And, you feel like these kids are.
So I was a perfect example of that's Jessie Brown. Like we've kind of joked about it. She's played here right through grade 8, right through her full career at TWU. Like she's been I feel like I've known Jessie Brown all her life because of that. I think we've done more headshots of Jessie Brown than anybody else that's ever come through the building. But
totally, or like Lucas Smith, right? Like I mean, like Luca even worked at the event center. Like you see those people grow up, and like you said, you're pulling for them like right from the get go, and you feel like even though you don't necessarily really know them, you feel like you do, and you get to know their families, and I don't know, it's that part of it is just so cool, and like and seeing them have success now is awesome, right? And then that even just extends to the people that you work with there. Like we were. At like the height of the size of our team, even from like a staff standpoint, a lot of them were younger, compared to you and I, and so they're all kind of moved on doing things in the business world now too. And I don't know, it's awesome to see. Like I was talking to Nick Phillips yesterday, and like he's risen up the ladder at Sleeman's Brewing over the last few years, and just like I said, like looking at that and thinking of where he was from when we hired him from the Lions, almost 10 years ago. It's crazy. It's so cool to see.
That's a great segue into a perfect story. You may recall on the 2012 3A basketball championship Nick had come through for his walkthrough, and Jared Harman bumped the lights out, and that was before we were LED. It was a 15 or 20 minute turnaround to try to get those back on. But I'll never forget Nick Phillips' interview day simply because of that. You guys shut the whole building down for 15 minutes.
I always felt pretty secure in my employment at the event center. I thought I did a pretty good job. I thought like people, really. I thought I had a good handle on things, and I think that might have been the only time where I legitimately thought I was going to get fired. We were so. I mean, the basketball tournament was pretty. That was the second year, right?
That was second. That was going into the Terry Fox Walnut Grove championship.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't the RC Palmer year; it was the Fox year, right? I had felt, the tournament was still kind of new. We were still, like I would say, it's fair to say we were still kind of earning the trust of the committee and the people involved with the tournaments, and we had done everything we could to show them what the event center was capable of. The lights in particular were like this big thing, and like adding that production value was this whole big thing of like what the event center was offering that event. And we were super excited, and I inadvertently just wasn't paying attention to my elbows as I opened the door and turned it off. And it was like the old school lights where it took 20 minutes. Yeah. I remember I think I just like left Nick high and dry. Like we'd walked into the booth, and I just was like, hey, I gotta go, and just sprinted downstairs. And I think I paced for 15 minutes while you guys did all the hard work and got the lights back on. It was definitely a moment to remember.
Yeah, so. There's every year through the basketball tournaments, we get a story like that. Like there's always the one thing that kind of pops out, and I don't think so. 2012 will live forever on the day that we killed. It was the first year that we had the shutters, and so it took everybody a minute to figure out what had happened because we did the shutters closed or whatever. But it just blacked out, and they were the metal halides, so 15-minute, 20-minute turnaround to get it back on. But I mean, that also turned out to be, I don't think that game was such a good basketball game that everybody long forgot about it by the time it ended. So it's just us that'll keep bringing it up with you for the rest of time.
Appreciate that. I run into I run into like Mike Hind or like one of the guys from the committee. They haven't forgotten. They still remember that moment.
Mike Hind doesn't forget anything, so that's you're going to be stuck with him for a while too. It's and that was a pretty cool stretch early on in there because, like you say, 2011, like everything was expanding really rapidly. 2011 was the Van College RC Palmer final, and then in 2013 we introduced the extra tournaments, going from 1 to 3. We brought the girls in that year, and then by 2014 we expanded all the way to 8 tournaments. And just last year it was we've added a 4th tier for the girls, and we're up to 9 tournaments now. So that's always been expanding. But through there, we went through 2011 with the World Junior A Challenge, which was a unbelievable event. And it was I don't know if we've talked about this, but we counted up, and there's been over 40 people from that tournament got drafted to the NHL, and a lot of them are really big names. And it's back then you didn't really realize it, but there was 40 NHL draft picks playing on 6 teams in that tournament.
Well, you said big names, right? Like Vasilevsky was on the Russian team, like Olli Mata. Like, it's crazy because having been around junior A hockey for as long as I was able to be, you don't see a ton of names get there from Canada and the U.S. a little bit more so. And I mean, obviously, the BCHL has always done a good job producing talent, but it's always still a little bit of an anomaly. Like, it's not like there's 20 kids every year. But when those European teams came in, they were bringing their top end talent. Like, they were bringing, I'm blanking on some of the names, but like you said, there's a lot of names. It's always, I do follow it every once in a while. I'll text you or I'll text Jason. Remember that kid was at the LEC in 2011. And it's funny because that was kind of the starting point for, when some of these events that were coming through were carrying big names that everybody would know of down the road, right? Like, where, whether it's the basketball or the lacrosse, it seemed like that World Junior event was the first one where all these future stars came through the facility. And I feel like too, like that event really put us on the map from a international standpoint. It was that came on the heels of the Olympics, obviously, and we had that Russian-Slovakian women's game, which I still think, to me, was maybe my favorite event ever at that facility in terms of, I think, because it just caught everybody off guard. Like, I don't think we expected the crowd to be just so rambunctious and so passionate. And obviously it was an exciting time in the city just with the Olympics just being a few weeks away. But it really put the building on the map.
It's funny you should say that, because one of the event that, like, I would say the same thing going international that really caught me off guard was Norsica in 2013 when those ones showed up. Because I remember, I think her name was Ariane that came from kind of representing Volleyball Canada. I remember talking to her going into that event, and she told me that, she said, if U.S. and Canada play in the final, we're going to sell this building out. And I was, love your optimism, but it was I was thinking to myself, like, that's probably, it's that might be a little bit of a pipe dream. And then sure enough, it was Canada and the U.S. in the final. And it was at the time, and maybe still to this day, one of the most full I've ever seen the building. And the crowd was about as into it as it could possibly be into it. And it was I remember that I believe the U.S. swept us 3 straight, but the crowd stayed involved the whole time, and it was loud and fun. And it still sticks out to me as one of my favorite events, like especially that final night that we've ever had here.
Yeah, there's a couple of things about that event in particular. I think, in fairness to your pessimism, I guess, about the sellout, like, we were still struggling to sell out even really good events at that time. I think now, like, the event center is a household name when it comes to sports, especially, and so people have a comfort level going to that building for anything, really. I think back then, like, we've talked about this lots over the years, like, the event center has always been a little bit ahead of its time in terms of what it is as a facility and what it can offer in terms of events. And we would host really great events, again, whether it's, Kurt Browning and Elvis Stoico, and we would struggle to hit capacity because I don't think people were used to staying in the Valley for those types of things. And I think that event was really no different. The other part is that event for me, I had seen it, up close a lot with Trinity Western, like their volleyball programs, second to none. It's unreal. But the athleticism that those athletes have is just it just had me in awe, like, that entire tournament. And I don't know that I just maybe had, and maybe I think it was the year before or 2 years before, where Trinity won the CIS championships at the LEC, and it was 2 years, pretty
2011,
close. Yeah, right, 2011, right? And so it was pretty close. But I mean, like, when you see it, like, there's something that when you see your country do it, it's just a little bit more impactful. I also think it was probably the first event on that scale where I mean, we really had a full team in place. I felt really good, probably more so than most after that event in terms of what we were able to accomplish. And like, I remember that the gold medal match in particular, we'd had our ups and downs. Like, I think on a production standpoint, it was our production was what put that building, on the radar for a lot of those events, like the video work that you and your team did, and whether it was Sean and Brent before or Ron Petrescu before, like it was like I really feel like, and I will always feel like the production that the facility does is really what helps separate it in a lot of ways. And that was the first event that I felt like we nailed it from start to finish. It was that gold medal match, the Crosby goal replay, and that intro video that you put together was just like, I remember how hyped you were. I remember Sarah Cameron sitting in the booth beside you. I remember the whole team just like waiting for it, and it all went off like just click, 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 boom, like no issues at all. And it just got the whole building amped, and it made that event something so special.
It's funny you should bring that up, because I remember thinking about it and I thought, like, how can we get this crowd going right off the bat? And it was, fairly close on the heels of the Olympics. It was a couple years removed, but, it was more or less. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, U.S. Canada, it's a huge rivalry. We used to build it. And at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. the night before, when I was putting together in my head, it was just the best idea I'd ever had in my life to run that Crosby goal to start. I think it said something along the lines of, Canada-U.S., like one of the world's greatest rivalries. But do you remember the last time these two teams played for a gold medal in British Columbia? Yeah. And so I thought, and then we ran the Crosby goal. But then when we hit play on that, all of a sudden it hit me. I thought, man, like if this doesn't fly, I'm just going to look like a complete idiot. Like we're running a hockey highlight at a volleyball game. But I remember as soon as that goal went in, and it went into that Macklemore song, and all the place just exploded, and it kept the atmosphere for the whole night. And that was really big for me moving forward, because it really let me know that it was like, okay, we can take a few chances with our intro videos here and try to buy into the crowd. And it's something that I still rely on today. Like even going into the Giants playoffs, we tried a lot of real different stuff that was probably a little questionable, just on the hopes that the crowd would buy into it, like using Sign Girl Amelia and stuff, and letting her come in and hold up signs in the intro video. Like that was a real kickoff point, that 2013 event, like, letting us know it was okay to take the risks.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And I mean, the one thing too with like, I think we've learned over the years there with the anything international, like anything that tugs on heartstrings is going to work. Like it's just, and the fans are just different at international events. It's curling, like just whatever it is, whatever the sport is, it almost doesn't matter when the flag's, at play.
Well, absolutely. Even like, when we were doing the exhibition games for the World Juniors here, which is one of my, like, to me, that the World Juniors has been just to be involved in it in any way. It was a lifelong dream. But, like we have Finland playing in teams, and they're just showing up. It's just fans. And they were coming to the exhibition games here all, painted up and ready to go. Like the Finland section's all blue and the Czechs are there. And it's people and I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise. People love getting behind their country at any level whenever they can. So it's those are always the most fun. When we were lucky enough to host the CIBC series, Canada-Russia or WHL-Russia game. Same thing, like people just come in, and even though it's WHL, some of the players that come through this building that we can't stand all the way through, suddenly you're just so behind that squad going up against the Russians. Like it's not hard to get people supporting that.
No, yeah, I was at that USA-Finland game, and obviously Canada's not playing, but just the fact that Quinn Hughes was playing and he was a Canuck draft pick, like it's just like everybody was on Team USA that night, which is just, like I said, it's something different about anything international that just brings out usually the best in people in terms of like being good fans and like having a good time. So
we were extremely lucky with that. Like, Jack Hughes and Quinn Hughes, like obviously Quinn Hughes had the Canucks pull. Jack Hughes was the eventual first overall pick. And of course, Finland had Capo Kakko come through on, and there was a second overall pick. So it was really a perfect storm for us to get people into the building and support that. But as far as an exhibition game goes, the crowds there were amazing. Everybody was super into it. The games were good. Like those were just awesome. Like a great way to lead into Christmas and get ready to watch the tournament itself.
Oh, for sure. And it's kind of funny because if I remember correctly, Quinn got kicked out like in the first period because somebody went after his brother, and he ended up dropping the gloves, which you can't do in an international play. So he only played, I think, a period, not even. But
yeah, I can't remember exactly when that happened, but that's exactly what happened. Somebody went after Jack, and then he got. But the crowd just loved every second of it. Everybody went nuts for it.
Yes.
Little 5'7" Quinn Hughes sticking up for baby brother. It's just, Like that's the stuff that people just get behind. It's so what would Here's one for you here now. So like now we go back, and we've had some like pretty special events while you worked here. Like even just the storyline behind the Champions Cup when we got it in 2013, and double booking and waiting in over to find out what happens in Calgary for Washington to come. But what would you say that your favorite event you worked here for was, and what would you say now on the flip side coming back? What's your favorite event as a fan?
I have a hard time putting anything ahead of the high school boys and girls championships. There's, when you have I don't know if access is the right word, but the access to like being, floor level for those kind of moments. And just, I still feel super fortunate to be able to like sit courtside and like be standing there at the scorer's table during the intros, whether it's the girls.
Sorry, one of the things like I've always said that we've talked about this a number of times over the years is that one of the great things for us as sports fans and former athletes is we've sort of backdoored our way back into these championships. Like we're such a big part in being on the floor during the celebration, and it's awesome to be. Like I'm with you. Like I just can't wait till those last 2 minutes of the of each championship every year. I always make sure I'm down near the table and on the floor for it.
Well, like to me, it's like the intros is one thing for me, like watching the kids' reactions in their faces when you see like the 12th man and the grade 12 basketball team, like getting his headshot put up on a giant screen in front of 4,500 people. It's just, I don't know. I try to picture what that would feel like for me when I was a kid, and seeing the reactions that they give off. I always I can visualize that. So it was a really cool memory. To your point about the end of the game, like I used to take pride in being like, okay, I'm taking this side. And I think there was like a 4-year run where I always ended up on the side of the winning crowd, and like just about like getting trampled every time. But it was just, it was a cool thing to be at and just to be there for. And, but, beyond the high school championships, because that's just become such a part of the event center, it was almost like, regular routine type event. The first ever stealth game against Minnesota was awesome. And because for me personally, like that was just the culmination of, I don't know how many years of just work and effort to try to get a team into Vancouver. And, I'm sure everybody's got different memories of what the stealth, meant to them and what the team was, the LEC. But, for us, it was like, that was a plan that went back to the first exhibition game. And then, the exhibition games, led to the Champions Cup. And even that, like you mentioned, that Champions Cup, it was like, that game was unreal. And then to bring that back, and then, I again still like vividly remember getting a phone call from Doug Walker driving up the hill on 168th on my way to work one morning, and just kind of being like, so what do you think this would look like? And I'm like, there was just so much time and effort and work put in by everybody in that facility and the township and just everybody to make that a possibility, and to get to that point where, and it was like, you were like the press conference, to like a few months later hosting that home opener. It was like all in, and it was such a and to see, I don't remember the exact attendance number, but a pretty full building. And I still have that picture in my wall in my house. And I think, maybe more so it was like the people after that game and like getting the, like people kind of, it's like anything, when you're in the midst of it, and this, when you're planning events and you're working in that industry, you're not really thinking about what any of it maybe means or doesn't mean. And after the game, like hearing from so many people how special it was to have pro lacrosse back in BC, and get like this totally different type of feedback than what you're used to, was just, and like, I don't know, just there was moments during that night where I was just like, oh man, like this is special. And it was a really big deal. And it was, and that carried on, for the 4 or 5 years the team was there. But like that one night in particular was just phenomenal.
Well, I remember that night. Like I remember this. It was like Christmas for me. I couldn't sleep. I think I got here at about 6 a.m. It was still blackout, and it was just so excited to see how the process went and see how it all went off. The game was very good. If I remember correctly, it was an 8-6 final. Tyler Richards stood on his head. You may recall like Justin Salt and Logan Schuss, eventual teammates, had a fight. It was just like the whole thing. I remember Cliff Smith had a super nice goal, and it kind of diving through the crease. Like the whole thing overall. You couldn't really have asked for a better kickoff to a whole to a franchise, or whatever you want to call it, a transplanted franchise or whatever you want to say. But it was just an awesome event overall, the whole thing.
even that for me, like the Shuss part is kind of, I mean, like I grew up in Ladner, right? So like having Shuss come into town for that home opener and like getting in the fight. I think he was the number one overall pick the year before in the draft. It's like there's a lot of people from Ladner that I knew. So like for me to be part of that and have that as part of it too, like that all played into it for me. And it was, yeah, it was, like I said, it was a special night. Like I said, for me, it was, 3 or 4 years of culmination. Like, from the onset of that facility, it was always like, what are the biggest events and teams that we can maybe look at, having a part of this facility and a part of the community out there. And, I'll be honest, like in 2009, when the facility opened, like all that kind of seemed like a bit of a pipe dream, like it never really seemed like it seemed like a long way away. And so to be there, in 2014 for that and have that, it was pretty special.
So now what about coming back as a fan? Like you obviously, like, now you have the opportunity to bring your kids back and you're, actually enjoy a night simply as a sports fan. So what sort of sticks out as one of your, what have you come back to that's stuck out to you?
I mean, the Giants are special to me for sure. I mean, I've been a Giants fan. Like I remember, again, growing up in Ladner when the Giants were first formed, and I think it was 2001. All the players lived in Tawasin and Ladner. So like a lot of kids that I knew, like I was finishing up I don't know if I'd call it a career, but my hockey playing days. And like there's kids that I played with growing up that were, the first captain, Nick Marach, was a guy I grew up playing with. And Jeremy Jackson was another guy I grew up playing with. And these were all guys who had pretty big impacts on the team the first couple of years. And so I was always really aware of the Giants. Going back to like my early days working in junior hockey, the Giants were a team. I always give Dale a hard time. I actually applied for the Giants and he told me that I couldn't cut it. So, but then we had the Giants at the facility in 2010 as they were kicked out of the Coliseum during the Olympics. And so we got to know them and obviously built a working relationship. So it's a similar story to the Stealth. Like we were kind of always, hopeful and wanted to, we thought that the event center, could be a good home for a team like that. And as you recall, 2018, when we had that exhibition game, it 15. Wasn't, but in my mind, or 15, sorry, yeah, geez, 2015. Yeah. Again, for not so good reasons with my family, it was a day that stuck out to me because unfortunately my grandpa passed away that day. But we'd worked so hard to get that exhibition game there, and it was and I think in your mind and in my mind and like the team that was working at the facility, like we were like, this is a trial run, like this is like a show me night, right? Like what we can do, and it was a great night as far as exhibition game goes, and or exhibition games go, and so going back there and seeing the building packed for Giants games is awesome. And so I went back to answer your question about what I've been to. I went to the World Junior Exhibition game. I've been back for the memorabilia show. I've attended a couple of Thunder games. I've been back for a few things. I think for me, it's going back there. I love showing, when I left, my daughter was a baby. My son is still very well aware of the event center and still gives me a hard time for ever leaving. I think he really liked the access more than most. Yeah. But I think anytime I go there and see the building full, it's just awesome. Like I know how much work went into making that a possibility for the event center. And like, anytime I see, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people in there, I'm like, this is what all that work was for. And I don't know why it's probably stupid, but I just enjoy that. I'm like, there's something like sentimental about that for me, and just being like, yes, this is what we were working towards all those years, and having people here and enjoying it and seeing what this building is. Because I think there's a part of me that feels like unless you've been there, and you can attest to this, more than anybody, like unless you've been there and put in, the sweat equity and the time and the energy to get it to that point, you really can't, you don't appreciate it as much. And I know there's so many years when we were struggling to get people in there. Like if people just came, they'd see like what we're doing here and they're going to love it. They're going to think it's awesome. They're going to come back every week and it's going to be wicked. And like, whether that was for, a Chiefs game or a Riverman game, to me, it never mattered what was going on. That building was amazing. And if people just came and experienced it, they would love it and they'd come back.
Well, I can say that's like I remember the moment going into Game 5 of the WHL Finals last year, and that kind of everything you kind of just said kind of came to me, and I just remember saying like I don't even know if maybe like sense of pride. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but I remember standing right before the lights went down. I was so confident in what we had put together as far as our intros go. The crowd was packed. It was like loud. I just remember thinking like this is literally, like, to sound cliche, like this is what it's all about, and this is what we've been working towards. And it was, the way that the playoffs had played out, and then knowing that our back was to the wall. Game 5, we're down 3-1. The crowd showed up. It was loud. To me, that was, I really remember standing and looking out on that, thinking like this is why we do this. And it's that was over the years. And I've had that before, but I just remember that one specifically was just like, how can you top it? You're in the finals where you're back to the wall, and in the WHL, like it's just and the crowd was there, the people were there, the atmosphere was there. It's just that's like you throw your hands up and say like this is what we do it for.
Yeah, I mean, you think of it's crazy too. I mean, you look at the success that facility has seen in terms of the events, like whether it's Trinity Western, it's like being involved in a national championship, which seems like year after year in the volleyball side of things. It's the Langley Thunder hosting a Man Cup, the Junior Thunder, being involved in the Minto. Even the Stealth before they were the Vancouver Stealth, but they were, hosting the Champions Cup in 2013, and it's crazy. And unfortunately, whether it was the Chiefs or the Rivermen, they never saw that success. And with the hockey, to your point about that Game 5, it's really the first time that we've seen like league hockey have that success there, and it's crazy. I really feel like that facility. I think I said this before. It may be a little bit ahead of its time, and that's why we had some of those challenges earlier on. But I think now it's just what it provides the community, and whether it's Langley, even like what it provides, Surrey and Maple Ridge, like the surrounding. It's a great spot to go see events, and I'm not sure that no matter what the level is, anybody does events better. I mean, I'm biased, but I mean, does events better than the event center. It's everything from the play-by-play guys that have worked there, like Jake, Brandon, Brad. Like there's been some it's been. I mean, it's unreal. Like top down, the team that's been there over the years. It's been cool to see what that facility has provided. People in terms of opportunities, whether the athletes, whether staff, whether media types, it's crazy. It's awesome. It's been doing it. It's crazy. It's been doing it for 11 years, but it's awesome.
I think something to speak to that point is that it's not a lot. Most of the people that don't work here, and I can say this from experience and being around here for a very long time, is it's not really a job. People care about it. They put their effort in because the success of the event means just as much to them, probably more so than the paycheck at the end of the day. Like everybody that works here wants to be proud when they walk away from an event, and that's the first and the foremost thought going into it. And I think that's probably why it's so successful. Like there's been the investments that we've made in making the facility great are fantastic, but it's really the people that are making use of that and making sure it's used to its full potential is why it's so good.
Yeah, I mean it's for me, like we kind of joked about earlier, like the hours you put in when you're working at the event center, but like it never felt like that to me. Like it was awesome. I remember Stealth game days. I used to love getting there at like 8 a.m. and like just like walking through the building with my coffee and just seeing the Stealth in their pregame meeting in meeting room B, and then just watching the shoot arounds and just kind of like absorbing it all, because it really is like a unique opportunity to be that close to it all, and then it's watching the ticket sales go up throughout the day and like the buildings start to fill up and just all of it, like it's just and yeah, for me, like it was always like this challenge in my mind, like how do we, like events of any kind, sports or not, like it's hard to like not have like hiccups of some kind, and there's just so much that is like out of your control as an event organizer, whether it's like the scoreboard going down. Like I one memory I have is like Jamie and his team and like out on the and Wapples and all those guys with all the plywood on the floor trying to figure out the screen because the panels were out, and you guys going up there in the lift, like it was just like, and you're like, we're like, it's like 4 hours to game time, whatever it may be. But for me, it was always like a challenge. Like, how can we get through this game, this event, this day, whatever, with like as seamlessly as possible and like as on script as possible. Like that was always, I don't think we ever did it, but it was like, it was, but at the same time, I took so much pride in being able to react to whatever the challenge was that day, and being able to overcome it.
Well, that's the whole thing I think with working in live events is that you actually you plan as best you can, and the best thing you can plan for is staying calm
Yeah.
to react to everything that comes at you when you don't expect it, because it's impossible. You know, when you're dealing with thousands of people and teams and technology, like really, there's the only constant is the variables. But
Yeah, well, exactly. And I remember one of the things I learned early on, like I remember like my first couple of years, and maybe even going back before the events, I've been thinking to myself, like the panic would set in, and just like realizing, okay, like the more I panic, the worse it's going to get. And like, and so you finally find that like calm, or like how you deal with stuff. And like, you think of the issues like over the years, like, oh my gosh, man, like whether it was like, unruly fans, whether it was like, I don't know, like the internet, not, I don't know, like there's a host of things that like you could just never predict or plan for, because everything always works totally perfectly up until that day.
oh yeah, that's
Right.
there's no amount of testing that can ever protect you. It's the way it goes down. But I mean, I think that the one thing that we're kind of, it's funny how like I can tell just by talking to you, like if you've ever worked here, or anybody that's worked here that's know, and hopefully a lot of the people that go, if you've experienced Langley Event Center on any some level, it's a part, it's something you can't shake forever. Like the people that work here, you're so deeply involved. There's no real fringe jobs here. So if you've worked here, you've been deeply involved in how the in how everything goes pulled off. You know about the problems. You know about the fixes and how it goes. And it's probably something that's just going to in the grand scheme of things, we're still relatively young in it, only 10 years into the existence. But I don't think that anybody that ever comes through here for any of this stuff will probably ever forget what they've been through.
No, like for me, I've said this to you before, like, offline or whatever. And when I, talked to some of the other people that I got to work with there, like for sure there were challenges at times and things that we all went through when we worked there. But like for me, the time of my life, like in terms of like growing, in terms of like who I am now, and the event center will always be like a really big part of who I am. And I always will like, look back and be, extremely like, I don't know, fond of the time I had there. I mean, just the opportunities and just like, oh, like, man, like, like I got to spend a weekend hanging out with Gordie Howe and Glenn Hall. I've got a picture of Gordie Howe picking my kid's nose when he was a year old. Like, it's just like the experiences that like happen behind the scenes, and just like, even just like, honestly, I know it sounds super corny, but like, like just the late nights, like, building programs and like, working on intro videos and with you, or like, and just the team, like I said, like the relationships, like, even now with what I'm doing now, like there's a lot of people that work with me at the event center that are working with me now, and it's the relationships you build. I'm so appreciative of the time. You and I joked about this a lot. Like at the time, it was like frustration and like just trying to get through whatever the challenge was. But like I said, you look back on it now, you're like, man, like that was awesome. Like, and like the people you got to work with, like, I remember like one of my favorite memories was the 3-on-3 basketball tournament that you guys organized. Like with the staff, like that was so much fun. And like even just sitting around like BSing with like you about sports, or like Tim and like whoever it was, right? Like there's just so many people that you're around like-minded people who all love sports, and you just don't think that people. It's like for me growing up, like just like a complete sports junkie and just like wanting to be involved, and like getting to spend time hanging out watching sports with like the whether it's Dale, the Giants, or like the Doug Locke, like, man, like Takata, I don't know, there's just so many people. Just like I could just go on for hours talking about just like those are the things where I look back and be like, man, I wouldn't change any of that. It was such a time to have, and then like I said, an opportunity, because working in sports is like tough, and there's not a lot of opportunity to really make the chance for like a really good career working in sports is very limited. Like there's only so many teams and so many events, and for forever, like look back at that and be like, I got access to all of that. Like you said early on in this conversation, like lacrosse, basketball, figure skating, curling, like all those things, like hockey, like it's like we got to touch all of it. It was awesome.
Well, I've been, they're hammering on the buzzer in my ear because we've gone on way longer than I said we were going to. So we're going to have to pick this all back up offline over a lunch or a beer one of these days. So,
Let's do it, man.
which isn't common. But thank you very much for taking the time and coming on. Like, I knew this was going to be probably a pretty interesting one because of, you've had so much insight and so much in-depth experience here. So thank you very much again. And I know that we will not be strangers moving forward.
Yeah, it was awesome to spend some time reminiscing. Appreciate it.